Hey, it's Ron McLean. Welcome to Hockey Talk on the Rock.
With Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
All right, we are back. Hockey Talk on the Rock, episode number 63. It is Monday, January 31st. January coming to an end, and we are coming back. It's been a couple weeks. Going to talk some hockey stuff, and we're going to talk Canucks. We're going to talk Evander Kane. We're going to talk the Arizona Coyotes and some other fun things. So, away we go.
Away we go, starting with Canucks.
Starting with the Canucks, what do you got? They've done, 500 hockey in the last 2 weeks?
500 hockey in the last 2 weeks, which honestly, given the situation, is quite impressive. I got to go to a game where Spencer Martin took the Canucks to a shootout loss, but it was impressive to see. And
against Florida. Yeah.
So we kind of started there, and then the Canucks had no goalies for a while, so it was Spencer Martin and Mikey DiPietro. And Mikey DiPietro played a game, but I think everyone is kind of aware of the fact he's not NHL ready, at least at this stage. I'm not sure if he's ever going to be an NHL goalie, but he did his best in that St. Louis game. It wasn't awful. It wasn't great.
Let him one bad goal.
Yeah, and then we had Spencer Martin for a couple more games. He got his first career win, which was nice to see against Winnipeg there. And then the Canucks lost a very boring affair to the Calgary Flames in overtime. So it's been a week, or a bit over a week here, and it's such a hard, I'm sure we're going to talk about it when we get into the trade rumors, but I do think the Canucks are in kind of a hard position a bit here because they're out of the playoffs. They're not out by that many points, but they have played more games than the teams they're kind of chasing. And so, I guess it depends on how legit, not San Jose, LA and Anaheim are.
Yeah.
Because I think those central teams are going to lock it down. Although, I will say, I kind of always was saying, I think Winnipeg's going to get that second wildcard spot. And then watching the game against the Canucks, they looked so bad. They looked really bad. Don't believe they're going to do it anymore. So maybe there is a spot for another Pacific team as a wildcard. But very interesting time as a Canucks fan. And I keep seeing seems to be in the next few days we're going to know what they are. But I do think by the All-Star break, we're going to have an idea of where this team is at and what moves they're going to make. So
is that this weekend or the next weekend?
It's this weekend.
Okay.
So there's a couple more games for the Canucks, and then, I think evaluate. And again, it's hard to say because in the West, I really think there's one good team, which is Colorado. And the rest of them, I think Minnesota and Nashville are good. And I would place money more on Minnesota than Nashville in the playoffs. But again, I've doubted Nashville the whole season, so it's highly likely they'll probably go on a run, but I do kind of think it might be a year that if you get into the playoffs, anything can happen.
Mm-hmm. I think St. Louis has been surprisingly strong.
St. Louis has been very good too, and kind of their younger players are driving the bus for them right now. So, that's kind of my Canucks recap outside of all the rumors surrounding the team, which is a lot.
Yeah, and essentially the goalies have been really good. It's been the overarching theme, right? Martin came out of nowhere, played really well. I think their overall 5-on-5 save percentage, since Boudreau's been in, is second in the league.
Yeah.
Which is really impressive. So you just need to find more ways to score, I guess, if your goalies are going to play like that for you.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because under Boudreau, we have seen this shift downwards in ice time for both Höglander and Podkolzin, and I'm not going to say that, I think both of them have had up and down seasons. I think Höglander hasn't been as good as he was last year, but it's not it's not super surprising. But when those two guys unfortunately where the Canucks are at right now, they kind of need those two to contribute.
Yeah.
And they're not, because when you see the third and fourth line kind of now, or even that first line with Dickinson on it, to me it's almost like a wasted spot. It's well, he's not going to score. I don't know if I'm being harsh, but it's just that it feels like they're missing someone, even though right now they're pretty healthy.
Yeah. And that was a big thing about the last, since we talked last, is they did lose a few key people for some of those games due to the COVID stuff. And then the Saturday night game against Calgary, besides it being boring, like Demko was good, not great, but only because he didn't have to be great.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a game for the taking.
Yeah.
They could have definitely taken that one.
And that was one that I feel like both, and you can say it about either team, like that was kind of a must-win game, and I don't think either team really showed up really to the degree that they should have, kind of for the level of that game. I think that the Winnipeg game was kind of similar, except for the fact that I think the Canucks showed up and were like, we need to win this game, and Winnipeg was kind of like,
Yeah, no, it was good. So first question for you, kind of moving on to trade rumors / Canucks, is obviously they want to move Halak to get away from next year's bonus overage they got to pay him. And I think I mentioned to you, maybe in talking, maybe in our last episode, that like there seems to be interest maybe from Pittsburgh. Because they have like zero confidence in Casey DeSmith anymore. And Jarry's been amazing. I feel like they might be able to convince him to do that, but they might have to hold back some money to do it too, because Pittsburgh knows that bonus is coming. At this point, do you think Martin would be a trade candidate because he's found money?
I don't know. See, I think I have more of a negative opinion of Martin than like everyone else, but it's not because I don't think it's a good story. I just think that it happens quite often in the NHL where a goalie will come up and they'll be kind of hot for a while because no one has a book on them, and then when they start to kind of find out where to shoot, then they start to kind of be exposed more for, you know, being human. If you look at Buffalo, for example, they literally have like no goalies right now. I think maybe someone like that could take a run at a Spencer Martin, but I don't know if it's realistic. And kind of going into the Halak thing, and I think it's going to be a theme of this episode, unfortunately, but I was mad in the summer when they traded Holtby, or when they bought out Holtby, because I thought it was kind of just a waste of cap management. And then they brought in Halak, and I was like, whatever, Halak will probably be better than Holtby, but I just feel like you could have ridden out that last year of Holtby's contract and been fine. And they, like, Benning put them in this predicament where it's like, we don't want to pay the bonus, but you gave him the bonus, and I don't know. I mean,
a fairly achievable bonus, too, when it comes down to it.
Yeah. I guess it depends, like, what do you expect to get back for Spencer Martin?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you get, I don't know if he's going to get another start, but with those 3 starts, like, it would be a late round pick.
Yeah. And I mean, sure, I think at this point in time, the Canucks are at a stage where they do want to restock kind of their cupboards a bit here in terms of prospects, but yeah, I mean, I can see it. I just feel like the whole situation was kind of avoidable. And I just kind of feel like if they can't move Halak, they might as well move Martin. Sure. Just to get something. Yeah. So then, kind of hopping off that, but going on to Evander Kane. Yeah.
So he did finally sign, like we talked about, with Edmonton.
Yeah.
And then they had a big win, and everyone's all like, you know, woo, Edmonton, and like
sort of goal.
Yeah, hilarious that they addressed like the area they didn't need addressing the most.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, and I mean, I assume Edmonton's looking at it the same way that I basically just talked about it, that if you get into the playoffs in the West, there's a decent chance you could take a run at it, and Evander Kane is like a 30-goal scorer, you know, they're getting basically, you know, a $6-7 million player for $2 million a season, but I just don't know why they really decided that was their right move in terms of the locker room, which already seemed to be a bit maybe challenged is the right word. And like, you know, Connor McDavid is a great player. I think no one's gonna argue you on that one, but his personality and his leadership I'm not completely sold on, and bringing in a guy like Evander Kane into that room where you don't necessarily have this strong leader. I know that's partially why they brought in Duncan Keith, and I won't go on my rant about that one, but it just seemed like an odd choice in terms of the locker room dynamics. I get it from the on-ice performance, but as you say, they're basically cap-strapped now to do anything at the deadline. So if they wanted to improve their goaltending, if they wanted to improve their defense, which is the areas that they probably should focus on, it's going to have to be dollar in, dollar out, and that's going to be harder to do with who they're going to have to move, basically.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. The only name I've really seen going out other than like trying to move Koskinen out for whatever they bring in is like Chris Russell going out the door. But, you know, the move is obvious for Ken Holland because it was pretty much the only player he could bring in without having to give up assets.
Yeah, totally.
And you know, I don't think it was the right move, but it didn't cost me anything. And, like, you know, I think it's Friedman who always says, like, when you're in a tight spot, the other gyms are going to throw you anvils before they throw you life preservers. And, like, everybody knew they needed a goalie. Yeah. So, from what I read, even the goalies that, like Korpisalo, that haven't been playing well this year, and, like, I read with Jones in Philadelphia, like, they offered what was probably a reasonable offer, and the ask was way above that because
why not?
They're desperate, right? So, Ville Husso on St. Louis is another one that they're talking about, but I think that's going to cost them a lot.
I was going to say, what about Bennington? Because I think the Blues are pretty happy with Husso right now. He's starting all their games.
Right.
Well, he's starting the games they win.
That's true.
So, I don't know, like...
Until he puts the first rounder back on the table, they're going to be in tight. But, like, they can't go into the playoffs without addressing their goaltending, basically.
No. But, yeah, it was an interesting move for the week. I listened to both interviews that Kane did. There's one on TSN with a female reporter, and then there was, like, his opening press conference, and it was just, like, you know, no accountability for anything that's happened kind of thing. And I was like, not surprising, but there's ways you could phrase his answers to questions that I don't know, would have been, if I was an Oilers fan, a little bit maybe more excited about him. But even just saying something like, you know, in the past I was a bit, like, I wasn't the best teammate, like, you could just say that, but he's like, oh no, it's their leadership that's bad and stuff like that. It's like, okay, come on, like, this is your 5th team or something now, and literally every time it's ended up bad for you, and we'll see.
We will see. Time will tell. It'll be a fascinating storyline to follow for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Long-term fascinating storyline with the Arizona Coyotes locking in a deal to play at Arizona State University for the next 3 to 4 seasons is insanity to me. It makes no sense. It's crazy. They're saying maximum 5,000 people, but like I've even read as low as 3,800 people. Like, I just... For how quickly Atlanta went to Winnipeg and how easy that happened, it's like, why are the NHL constantly standing behind a team that has failed for 30 years? 25, sorry.
I don't understand the Arizona thing, like, at all.
I don't.
Especially now that Vegas is there, because to me, like, Vegas kind of fills the hole of what Arizona could have been, almost. And, like, it's redundant having the 2 teams. And I even said, like, when they expanded to Vegas, I said, why don't they just move Arizona to Vegas? And I get it, they wanted an expansion team, but, like, it just didn't make sense to have the 2 for me. But when you say, like, you know, a market like Quebec or even Hamilton isn't going to be able to produce enough ticket sales or whatever to support an NHL team, and then you have Arizona that might be selling like under 4,000 tickets a game.
Right.
It's a joke at the end of the day, and
it is. And Quebec has this new state-of-the-art arena sitting there waiting, like, and the desire from the city. And I think Houston and Kansas City have arenas both that are ready. Houston's the 4th biggest, like, television market in the North America.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Arizona, like, because they're trying to work on that Tempe deal, right, to move the team there. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up going to Houston for a couple years and just moving them in there until they can get that Tempe deal. But
I think the NHL is holding out for that Tempe deal, and if it falls through, then I think that's the point.
Move.
I think so. But what I've read too is they're kind of getting greedy about it, and, like, they want the expansion fee, right? And so they're trying to come up with a way to fold bidding war, sell expansion fee rather than just simply relocate.
Of course,
which sucks. But okay, so question then. Let's say they don't go Houston or Kansas City, and they do go Quebec, which, like, is my high hopes, but is the lowest odds.
Happen, but
who would move to the West?
Yeah, that's a good question. because no one's gonna want to move back to the West,
No,
right?
no one. I mean, I feel like Detroit's probably going to dig their heels in because they've already done that
Yeah.
favor once.
Yeah.
I feel like Columbus might be the obvious one.
Columbus
'cause
was the first one I thought of too.
They don't really have that many established rivalries despite being there for nearly 25 years now.
Yeah.
Or 20 years, sorry.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's a tough one.
it would be tough, and that's again part of the reason why I feel like Houston is the most logical. I mean, Kansas City wouldn't be bad either because it's in the West too, but
Yeah, fairly central at least.
yeah. So anyway, there's some interesting storylines to follow, and that Arizona team, you know, they like essentially the ownership did this to themselves. They didn't pay their taxes on time or whatever, and they didn't pay rent for their arena, which is the most ridiculous thing for a professional like a professional team. And the mismanagement has been just astounding. That's what I'm gonna say to watch. So
and frustrating.
Yeah, totally frustrating. And you know, there's like there is potential, right, with that team. I just don't think there's potential with that team in that location. So.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on, trade rumors or
start and then end with awards.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's talk trade rumors because it's mainly going to be probably Canucks, I think. But
yeah, so the Canucks right now is just like a trade rumor factory. It seems like about, you know, they kind of came out and said the 4 names the Canucks aren't really taking calls on right now are Horvat, Pettersson, Hughes, and Demko. I think 3 of those beforehand we already knew, and the Horvat would be the only one that would be kind of surprising, but not totally because he is the captain of the team, and I feel like to re-sign Horvat, it's not going to be
JT Miller.
It's not going to be JT Miller, and that's the difference between the two, right?
Yeah. But
the JT Miller thing is very interesting, especially again with the position the Canucks are in, because I feel like if, you know, they were 10 points out of the playoffs and it looked like, okay, we're not going to make it, I feel like as fans, we'd be more okay with giving up a player like that if you get a good return. Obviously, it depends on what the return is, but because they're so close, it makes it a lot harder to digest, and for the team itself, if they give up a big piece like that, it could be very damaging to the locker room. Mm-hmm. The Canucks are in a decent position right now in the sense that they don't really have to make that decision until the trade deadline, even though I've heard that they want to make it before. And they could wait until the offseason, right? You sign for another year. You're just probably not going to get the same return if you do decide that you want to trade him. The name that popped up on Saturday night that was very interesting was Conor Carlin. Mm-hmm. And that's the one that, for me, I have a harder time with. And it's not because I'm more of a Conor Carlin fan. It's because, again, of Jim Benning's moves in the offseason. And that's one that, if you take the OEL contract, which I still think... I'm not a fan of it. I wasn't at the moment they took it. But getting Garland was at least something. You know, he's 24. He's on a reasonable cap hit. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I get... You must... At this stage, the Canucks are going to explore everything. Like, they're going to take no calls on everything. But who are you really going to get back?
I know. It's tough, especially, like, he's signed for 4 more seasons at under $5 million.
Yeah.
Like... You're not going to be able to replace that for that type of money.
Yeah.
I understand there's a lot of value because of the contract and the player, but that's the type of player and contract I think you want.
Exactly.
So that one's tough. I wouldn't do that myself.
Yeah.
The Miller one, like, I get it. He's got value, sell high, etc. But I've thought about it so much, and I feel like like you alluded to there, it would be damaging to the culture to do such a thing because he seems like such a leader, and like since we've been doing this hockey talk, we talked a lot about, you know, letting Markstrom go, letting Setcher go, letting Tanev go, letting Edler go, and obviously how much that did impact the team in a negative way. Yeah. And I feel like it would be too damaging in the sense that it would send the wrong message to the current players. Yeah. As like knowing that like, oh, if I'm getting towards my 30s, the team might sell high on me. Like, you know, less incentive for them to want to stick around if they do hit UFA. And then I think it would make it harder to draw people in, even more so than it already is as a Canadian market with high taxes. Like we've already seen with Beagle and Roussel and Poolman, like you got to give those extra years to get these players in. And if now you're going to start like selling high on players that haven't even hit 30 yet, then you're going to start having no trades.
I am more on the sell Miller train because I just think that for 7 years as a Canucks fan, we've kind of waited for this moment almost to be like, okay, we have an asset that we can sell. Again, it depends for what they get back, because if they can basically, if you can kind of fix your defensive prospects to get legit NHL bodies in there that could basically form that. The problem with the Canucks right now, in my mind, is that they're not built correctly. That's like the end of the day. And
True.
I think, yeah, you can flip Besser, but right now I don't think Besser's going to get you what you need compared to what JT Miller can. And that's, for me, the reason why I see it being logical. And also, I just don't believe he's going to re-sign with the Canucks. So that's the end of the day for me. It's like, okay, but if they keep him, I think it's great too. And that's why at this stage it's so hard to tell because of where they are in the standings. And again, if they're 10 points out, I'd be like, yeah, do it. But so close.
Because he is their only like point per game player they have.
Exactly. And he plays in all
totally.
Yeah.
Like, so there is going to be teams lining up, but
it's hard.
It's tough because you look at the successful teams and they keep their all-stars into their 30s, you know? Like, it's not like Philly moved on from Giroux before he hit 30, or Stamkos moved on from Tampa, and he totally could have.
Yeah, but Miller also played, like, he's played for two other teams, and Tampa did win 2 cups after trading him, and I don't think that sat well with him. Yeah. So I feel like for him, and this is, again, just why I don't believe he's going to come back, is why would he? Money, but I think he's going to get more money somewhere else. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, it's an interesting one. I think either way they're in a good position as long as you know, if they sell them for enough value. Right. Because if they don't, then it's not it's not going to be okay. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. And then I mean, there's some other players, like Shen has been attracting interest. And
yeah, I think Shen will get a late round pick or maybe a mid-round pick at the deadline, and Mott will probably get a decent...
I think Mott could get more than what we expect, which would be decent, especially if that line continues to play well, just because, you know, fourth line kind of players that can drive play going into the playoffs are usually things that teams look to build. And I mean, Mott could play on a third line, I think, and be pretty successful. You think about what Tampa's done in the last few years, adding kind of those players at the deadline. I think he could do pretty good. So, yeah, I don't know really about other trade rumors in the league because it's been so fixated on the Canucks for the last little while here, but Friedman kind of hinted that the Canucks might be the team to kick it off. Yeah, so I
can see it.
We'll
Rutherford's been in his spot for a while, and he's been holding tight.
He's been watching and holding. And
I think there's a lot of talk about Claude Giroux controlling his fate at the All-Star weekend. They're going to really talk about it. And, like, I've talked about him to Minnesota. It's popped up him to Colorado. I really feel like that's going to be one of the deals that happens. I read that Sutter in Calgary wants to Foley.
Okay, interesting.
Really badly. I mean, there's the LA connection.
Yeah, for sure.
And Trevelling, or however you say his name is, he's been pretty good at giving Sutter what he wants. Right. When he says, you know, what he wants. Yeah. So I could see that one. I don't know what it would cost Calgary. But I think that would help them out quite a bit for a playoff run.
It's going to be more annoying as a Canucks fan, but that's okay, you know.
So, yeah, I mean, I'd be happy if the Flyers were able to work a deal with Minnesota for like a Rossi, a first, and they would have to take Rask probably as a contract back. But, or like Colorado, I was looking, you know, I'm dreaming a little bit and thinking like, oh, like a package like JT Compher, Bowen Byram, and a pick would be nice, but you never know.
I was going to ask you a Flyers question because I was reading about it today, but there's all sorts of leakage that if the Avs don't re-sign Nazem Kadri, that he's going to end up in Philly. Oh. And I don't know if you had any thoughts on that one, but...
Hadn't heard that one. Yeah. I don't see how they would make the money work, especially when they have like $16 million tied up between Couturier and Hayes as their top two centermen. I don't know. He's a good player this year.
Yeah. He's having he's at the right point in time to be having a good year.
Yeah. Well, the other one, speaking of right time to have a good year, is Johnny Gaudreau. Yeah. And they're saying like if Calgary can't work that out, he would sign in Philly because he's been a Philly fan since he's grown up or whatever. Yeah. And that one makes a little more sense to me because they could use a winger more than a centerman. Yeah. But We'll see. It should be interesting, but I feel like Minnesota is going to make a move probably for a centerman, a big move. I feel like Colorado, I don't know how much I want to mess with that offense right now.
Yeah,
but
I think they could use a winger though. And I know that Giroux has predominantly played center, but he has played wing recently, and
a second line of Kadri, Burakovsky, and Giroux would be pretty deadly.
Yeah.
So. I mean, they've you got to think they're gonna do something really big because this is gonna be they really have to.
Year.
They got to do it right, or at least make the final.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean McKinnon just got hurt again, which isn't great for them, but for them it doesn't really matter until the playoffs.
They'll persevere.
Yeah.
For sure. So I'd be surprised too if they don't make a move for a goalie.
Yeah. And again, that just dreaming a little bit, it's that's a place that I could see that Halak ending up and working out well, but I don't see it. I think they're gonna just pay the bonus and play it out with Halak. So whatever.
Yeah, and then other than that, I mean, there's just always the typical Toronto needs a defense rumor and stuff like that. But I don't have anything really specific, I guess.
No.
I think Pavelski could be a big fish if Dallas starts to slide.
I also heard Pavelski, Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the other one besides Giroux that I heard to Colorado, and I think that makes sense again.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Well, we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah.
And then
exciting times.
Should we quickly rifle off some
mid-season awards?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll go off the top of my head because I don't have to look up notes. But for the Hart Trophy, for me, I have Ovi.
Okay, it's funny because I actually forgot about Ovi, but I'm gonna agree with you.
Yeah, I got Ovi just because he's having such a year, and Backstrom was hurt for the first 30 some odd games, and he was still amazing. Yeah, he's had such a year. It's been crazy. And then I was looking at second, and I was like, I don't even know. It's tempting to not want to throw a goalie in there. I feel like Saros, Nashville wouldn't be Nashville this year without Saros. Yeah. And Vasilevsky doesn't get the love he deserves. I hate the Rangers, but Shesterkin
had a good year.
Yeah, he's had a really good year, and the Rangers wouldn't be as good as they are without him playing the way he's been. So, besides Ovi, it's been goalies that I was looking at for the Hart.
Yeah. I threw out Huberdeau because I feel like he's also just having a ridiculous year, and again, probably they always say he's the most underrated player in the league, him or Barkov, but they are underrated for being where they're at, and
that's just such a well-built team.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And I know that because Barkov plays there, it will detract from the votes or whatever, but I do think he needs some recognition for the season that he's having. So. Yeah. I'd say him, and then I agree. I think Ov for this stage of his career needs to get some love.
It's been crazy. He's still third in scoring or whatever.
Stupid.
So moving on to I guess top defense is the one off the top of my head. Victor Hedman should have way more Norris trophies.
Yeah.
I feel like he was kind of my top 3 already, and then they played that game recently where they only dressed 4 D-men, and he played 30 minutes and got 2 goals and an assist, and he was looking forward to it because he won that challenge. I was like, man, this guy is on another level. So for me, Hedman was the pick.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good picks this year though.
I agree with you. I think Hedman is the best defenseman in the league, and he probably should win it every year, to be completely honest. But I think it's gonna be Cale Makar this year.
Yeah,
that's just the feeling that it's going with. And he scored a ridiculous amount of goals. So I feel like Makar will win, but I think Hedman would be a logical pick.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Yossi deserves a little.
And
love
that
too.
was the third one I put, was Yossi.
Yeah,
he's having a crazy season.
He is, yeah.
So, I mean, that whole Nashville team has been good, but Yossi's been him and Saros have been unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going random still. Calder Trophy.
Calder Trophy. Okay, so again, I think the 3 finalists are pretty clear.
Yeah.
It's Zegras, Seider, and Raymond.
Yeah.
I think right now you go with one of the Detroit guys, but I think that Zegras is going to end up winning it.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, talked 10 games ago, I probably would have said Raymond.
Yeah.
I think right now I would give it to Seider.
I agree.
Just because he's playing 22 minutes a game as a rookie, and it's harder to be a rookie and that number 1 guy, the guy, and getting a lot of points too. Yeah. So I think right now I'll give it to him, but I agree with you totally.
I just think he's coming on, and the stuff that he's doing, after scoring the Michigan goal and stuff, just the attention he's getting, I feel like he's gonna end up winning it, but it's just a gut feeling. So, okay, for Jack Adams.
Oh, coach. Okay.
Yeah. I have two.
Do you? Okay. You go first because I'm gonna think for a second.
So I've Brunette in Florida
Yep.
for taking over from Quenneville, and the team's still doing so well. And then Dallas Eakins in Anaheim, because who would have thought that Anaheim
Yep.
would be here? So those are the two that I just thought of off the top of my head. But I'm probably missing someone pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, right away I thought Nashville and Laviolette
Yeah.
because like again.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
think,
a good one.
I don't think anybody had them as high as they are. And then on top of that, like, who else is just being surprising? Like, I think Dallas Eakins is probably pretty right.
Yeah.
Sullivan in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's
Because I don't
true.
think a lot of people like that. I don't think either of us had Pittsburgh making the playoffs, and they're doing unreal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd put maybe those three.
Yeah, I agree. And then Vesna. I
Right.
mean, we kind of talked about it. Like, I personally would give it to Saros because I feel like he's just having a crazy year, but I think it's going to be Shesterkin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like 5 or 6 names up there right
Yeah.
now. Like if they were gonna put 6 names out,
Yeah.
I think it would be like, Anderson, Vasilevsky, Jari, Shesterkin, Saros, and
Yep.
the other one I'm not thinking of. But I think Shesterkin would get it.
Yeah, I think so too.
But there's some even like Jack Campbell's having a really good year.
Yeah, I know.
Not so much last week or two.
No,
but,
he's slipped a little bit here, but yeah, there's been some good goaltend.
mhm.
So then the last one I have is the Selke, and this is the one that I put the least amount of work into because I didn't look up anything.
Okay.
But I put down Stone and O'Reilly because it was like the traditional ones, but then I realized Stone's been hurt for like most of the season, and O'Reilly's not having a great season.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna change it to Barkov, which is also kind of a bit of a cop out.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one I read. What was it? It was someone on Minnesota. I think they had like Foligno or something.
Oh, really?
And apparently he's having an unreal defensively good
Okay.
year.
I could see that.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
didn't look into this one
Yeah.
much either, so I'll tap out and say
Okay.
Barkov, I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah. I think that's it.
That's
I
it.
mean, unless we're gonna guess Art Ross and
Nah.
Rocket, but
Give it to Ovi, give it to Huberdeau.
yeah,
I don't know.
call it good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there we go.
Well, we'll be back next week, and hopefully, like Laura alluded to, that the All-Star Game's coming up. So hopefully some trades will start happening. We'll have some more news, and hopefully the Canucks can rattle off a few more wins.
Nice.
And between now and then, we'll be back to do episode number 64, and you can check us out on the YouTube, and we're on the Spotify.
Too, yeah.
So thanks for listening and or watching.